Hello Booktube, it's Scott. It is the 2nd of August, so your friend from the future is in the past. What I'm going to do today, or for the month of August, is I am going to read the books that you recommended in the Media Freakout tag. So the first question of the Media Freakout tag is, what is the best book of 2020 that you have read so far this year, or something like that. And I'm going to watch a bunch of videos, see what you're going to pick, read those books, and see if you're good at suggesting books or not, Booktube. That's really the point here. Can Booktube pick my TBR and be successful, or should I go off kilter and listen to myself? I think we all know the answer, that I'm a bit of an idiot and that Booktube will probably do a better job, but let's confirm it with a scientific test. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through 10 Booktubers videos, and we're going to see what they recommend, and that is going to be my TBR. I will say that if anybody picks a book that I have already read, that we'll look through another Booktubers video until we get 10 books. 10 books is the aim. I will also say that these are all channels that I like and adore, so you should I'll put them in the description when this video goes up, but you should check out these channels. Some of them are very good. In fact, they're all very good. Some of them are better than very good. All right, let's go. I'm going to do this weird thing where we have a video in video. You get to see my whole computer screen. All right, so we're going to watch Sam's video at Paper Knot Books first. What I will say about Sam is, don't leave your TBR unguarded around her, because she's a book thief. She's not a book thief, she's a TBR thief. Yeah,
let's jump into these prompts. Right off the bat, what's the best book that you've read in 2020? And I feel like I should reintroduce myself. My name's Samantha, and I'm obsessed with the book Oval by Ilvia Wilk.
I have no idea what this book is about. It's a shape. It appears to be purple. Literally, there's some sort of shadow going on. There's a shadow of the word oval on this egg sort of oval shaped thing. I don't know what to think about it. Is this non-fiction, fiction, YA, adult? What is it? I have no idea. So that'll be fun. I'm not going to find out anything about this book. I'm deliberately not going to find out anything about this book. I'm going to go in completely blind. All that I know is that Sam likes this book. You're going to see all of these booktubers pulling faces as they're mid-pronouncing words here, and that's not going to be very cool for them. Anyway, we're going over to Burner, and we're going to see what Burner recommends.
Question is, best book you read so far in 2020? This is the only question that I will talk about. 2 books. The first one is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch.
So wait, firstly, Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I've not read that book. That's been on Booktube a little bit. I think it's a sci-fi. I don't know much more about it, but 2 books. So what I think we have to do is we have to make a rule here for 2 books. What we'll do is, Burner, you can have 2 books, but every booktuber that comes after you only gets 1 book. And if you recommend more than 2 books, then you're in trouble. Then I'll pick which one of the books I want to read the most. That's what we'll do. Which one I'm most excited about. Probably actually which one is easier based on what I can get my hands on, because I'll have to get my hands on some of these books somehow, and we've just had quite a scary lockdown come here with our lovely friend the coronavirus. Anyway, let's see what Burner's second book is.
I read this book with Naomi from Naomi's bookshelf, and we really had a wonderful body reading experience. It's a wonderful science fiction story which is both thrilling and has very likable characters. The complex plot structure really impressed me in many ways. And I gave this book 10 out of 10. The second book that I'm going to talk about is the only other book that I gave 10 out of.
Right, The Help by Catherine Stockett. This is a book that I would love to read. It's on my, I already have a copy of it. It's a book that I would be hoping to have got to sort of later in the year, maybe early next year. I don't know. I have a lot of books on my TBR. I read a lot of books, and yeah, so I've got an audiobook copy of this. So I might audiobook this one because, yeah, I can. This I know a tiny bit about. This is The Help, I think, refers to like that horrible racist term, The Help, like it refers to like black maids or something like that. So that's sounding like it's going to be a bit of a race uncomfortable thing, which I'm totally there for. That's the sort of stuff I love to read. Other people's perspectives that aren't me. All right, let's see what Perry has to say at Littery Nittery.
Is the best book you read in 2020, and for this I'm going to go with my favorite book and mention If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. I read this.
Okay, If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. I think this is this new field of dark academia. I'm not really sure what dark academia is. Is it like bad stuff happens in some sort of school or university setting? Is it like The Secret History? But I've seen a few people talk about this book, and I'd be quite interested to read it. Yeah, so let's not find out anything more about this. Let's continue. We got Cozy Comfy up.
So far in 2020, and that is, I have 3 5-star books, guys, but this one is definitely going to be the one that I would say read, and it's such a relevant book for even now because
The Last Thing You Surrender. I can't actually see who that author is. Let's get close. Leonard Pitt Jr. So again, I don't like to know much about a book before I read it. I think if you're expecting a thriller and then you get a sci-fi, it's not cool. Also, sometimes that really is cool, and you know, you're led one way and it takes you the other way. And just the more you know, the less the author can surprise you with their writing. And so let's avoid all sorts of spoilers and move on. Okay, this is Sarah at Sadie Reads again. Let's see what she has to say.
Read so far in 2020. I'm indecisive. Okay, there's probably going to be multiple answers for all of these questions, as there are in pretty much every tag that I ever do. So, best books this year. Now, there's 2 ways of looking at this. There's books that were released this year, and there's just the bigger pool of books I have read this year. So,
right. So I don't want to know the best book you released this year. I want to know the best book you've read this year, because I want a good book. I want to know it's a good book, and I don't know how many people read books released in 2020 versus back catalogue. I don't know the numbers, but I mainly read back catalogue. So I'm going to assume that I'm not a freak, which is often a bad assumption. And let's ignore what Sarah says for this year, and let's for books released this year, and let's see what she says for her best books of the year. And remember, she said she's got a few. She can only get one.
Good books that I have read that were released this year. We've got Saint X by Alexis Shakin. We have Scabby Queen by Kirsten Ennis. There is Scenes of a Graphic Nature by Caroline O'Donoghue. And, of course, Summer Water by Sarah Moss. They all start with S. That's a bit creepy. Or a bit Sesame Streety. This year's reading was brought to you by the letter S.
have to say, oh, there's a car coming past. I have to say I like booktubers that don't take themselves too seriously, and you've just seen that there.
If we're just looking at books that are released whenever, I've really enjoyed The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I've really liked...
So I've read The Night Circus this year even. So that I gave 3 stars to. That's something that seemed to be very popular on BookTube, but I'm not a big fan of The Night Circus. It wasn't bad, but best book, it's a bit questionable.
Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier.
All right, that one is a much better book, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I have read that book, but so I won't read that again. So we've got a good book and an average book. Let's hope that she's going to recommend 3 books so that I can actually read one of her books.
I recently finished The Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay. That was great. And I'm currently reading Normal People, which, you know, my best bookish friend is going to hate me for when I tell him that I actually am really liking it. So...
Right, so I can pick between Rebecca Mackay and Normal People. And I'm going to make this easy on myself. I have a copy of Normal People. I'm going to pick Normal People. That's it. Also, Normal People's been all over BookTube. I really do want to see if that is worth the hype or not. So this will also be my review of Sally Rooney's overhyped book. Is it justified? I did just say it's overhyped. It is overhyped because it's got way too much hype, but it might be justified. Anyway, we're on to Josh. He has an awesome beard. He's not a secret Viking. Let's go.
The best book I have read so far, and this is one that it's hard to answer, and it's probably going to change with time depending on the day. And I'm not even sure I named this book during my quarterly review back in March. For now, it's going to be Not That Bad by Roxane Gay. It's an anthology of essays related to...
All right. Roxane Gay is somebody that I would love to read more of. And non-fiction, it's nice to have somebody recommend a non-fiction book. I'm sure I can get Roxane Gay's book. That shouldn't be too hard. Roxane Gay is super popular, super famous. So, yeah. All right, let's move along and let's see what Laura has to say.
Book that you've read so far in 2020. There's no question. It's easy. Normal People by Sally Rooney. I can't stop thinking about that book.
Well, I said it was overhyped on BookTube, and 2 people have recommended that. So, Sarah from Sadie Reads Again and Laura from Laura Reads Pages. She reads pages, not books. She'd be quite happy with an essay, a pamphlet, a leaflet. I don't know. I'm getting sidetracked. Anyway, we've got a double recommendation for Sally Rooney's Normal People. So that's good. That's good because Berna gave us 2 books and now 2 booktubers have given us the same book. So we're still on track for 10. Now, if everybody else could just name 1 book in their tag and I can count correctly, that is questionable. I'll have 10 books. Who did I pick next? Victoria.
Question 1. Best book you've read so far in 2020. If anyone that has been watching my channel for more than 10 minutes, can you guess what my favourite book so far this year is? It's Tender is the Flesh by Augustina BAZTERRICA.
That is a world where eating human flesh has been legalised, and that sounds horrible and dystopian and exactly the sort of fucked up shit that I want to read. So that's a good recommendation. Very excited for that one. Let's go on. Phoenix at Some Bunny reads.
Questions. So question number 1 is best book you read so far in 2020. And this is a very easy question because in 2020 I read my favorite book of all time, and that is A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. Before I read...
Okay, I've not read that book. Did they make that one a movie with Whoopi Goldberg and Reese Witherspoon, or is that a completely different thing that they did? I don't know. I suspect that this is YA. I have heard of this book. It might even be middle grade, but it's quite famous. I suspect that this will be a nice, easy read to burn through. Let's see if it's good. Okay, so I couldn't actually get one of the books. I mean, I could, but the shipping time and the filming of this and yeah, it's just best if I don't bother with that book and I do a different book. Anyway, these booktubers over here, yeah, this is weird. The camera's going the wrong way. I'm sure you know these booktubers. Turns out there's a couple of recommendations, or there's a recommendation here that I haven't read.
The one about the hen. What's it called? The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly. That's a good one.
All right. So I have not read The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly, and I will steal that book from Nelle's shelf and read that, and that'll give me 10 books. So apologies to the booktuber who didn't make it on this video, but we're going to keep that person silent, and we're going to edit them out, and they're going to disappear. So now that we have a 10th book, all right, that's it. Okay, so I've finished reading all of those books now, and I thought I'd do a quick review of them, and let's see if the books that I read were better on average than the books I've read in the past. So I'm going to do a quick speedy wrap of them, and I'm going to do them in order of worst to best because it seems like the trendy thing to do. And the worst book that I read from these 10 books was Blake Crouch's Dark Matter. That was a recommendation from Berna. Berna is lucky that she's got 2 books in the recommendations here. I'm counting this for the purpose of statistics as a 1-star book, but I did not read very much of this at all. This is one of the earliest DNFs I've ever had. I think it may actually be the earliest point I've ever DNF'd a book. I just can't stand science fiction books that have no idea about science. I don't mind if you completely change science, but if you have no idea, like, it's just some of the stuff he said, it's clear that he's never spoken to a science student or a professor or anything. It's just so wrong. And the characters were so wafer thin to begin with, and then the plot was beginning without characters. So I gave up on it. I gave 2 stars to Oval by Evilla Wilkes. This was recommended by Sam at Paper Knot Books. This was such a frustrating book because it had such a great idea, such a great world, such great themes, some really good quotes in it. It really could have been good if it had a plot or characters, or was given to a publisher who had the balls to stand up to an author and say, this is a first draft, because it just wasn't well executed. But it was so nearly an absolute perfect book, and I can see why Sam has loved this book, because it's critiquing neoliberalism. It's turned The Bachelor into the reality TV show The Bachelor into a model for society, and then it's critiquing it and pointing out how it actually critiques society as a sort of, and it's this lovely sort of, I can't tell whether you're being satirical or whether you are being serious, and I suspect the answer is yes. And it's just terribly executed. Yeah, so the next one I'm going to talk about is A Wrinkle in Time. This was from Phoenix at Somebody Reads. This is clearly her favourite book because of nostalgia. It is a children's book. It is a fine children's book, but it's a children's book. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I gave it 3 stars. And I don't think I need to justify why. The next thing I'm going to talk about is The Last Thing You Surrender by Leonard Pitts Jr. This was recommended by Comfy Cozy Up, and I gave this one 4 stars. This was a book about racism, about war, about acceptance. It follows three characters: a black man who is drafted into the war as a soldier, a black woman who is the sister of the black man, and a white man who is saved from death by a black man at Pearl Harbor, who then loses his life. The man who saves the white man is the widow, is the husband of the woman. So they're all connected in this weird way, but they basically have three separate stories. It's fascinating. It occurred to me reading this that I have read a lot of books that talk about racism, but very few that were written by a black man, and something that I needed to read more of that I didn't realize. I marked this down. There's a section of this based in Melbourne, which is where I live, and there was just so much that was not right, and it took me right out of the book. And it's not something that I think that most people would deal with, but just little things, getting the sport wrong that we play in Melbourne, saying that he went out to a pub near Port Phillip Bay, which is like me going, was like Colorado, we went out to a pub near the mountain. Like, that's just, it's a silly thing to say. And yeah, it's just that questioning the research that he's done about Melbourne, he's clearly not done a lot, made me question the research he has done about the rest of the book. But the comparison of the Japanese to the opinion the Japanese had about basically anybody who wasn't a Japanese person, and the opinions that white people had towards black people was obviously quite fitting and quite nice. I wasn't a fan of the racism towards the Japanese, although I did enjoy the names that the white soldiers gave the Japanese guards, which I think probably would have been accurate. In the prisoner of war camp, calling one of the guards Shitface was my favourite name, and they were all called similar names. That was enjoyable, but most of it was just a little bit, I thought that was just racism in there that maybe didn't serve a point. But it was a very good book, and I suspect that if it wasn't for the Melbourne thing taking me completely out of it and pointing out some flaws, that it could have even got to 5 stars. The next one I want to talk about is Not That Bad by Roxane Gay. This was a series of essays on rape culture. I think that this book sort of points out why star ratings is dumb, because what do you rate this? It's every essay is written by a different person. It's put together. It's meant to sort of give you a view of what various people go through and how the experience of sexual abuse is not uniform across people. It gives you stories of gay men. It gives you stories of young women, old women, ethnic women, tall women, fat women, all different, like women with big tits, women with little tits, and the experience is obviously going to be different for all of those women. And it was quite interesting to hear about those experiences. And it points out the need to listen to victims and take them as their word, and not to judge them, and not to say, well, I haven't seen that or whatever, like that. And it points out how much those experiences completely ruin their lives. So it's super powerful, super worthwhile read. A book that I think is actually probably aimed more at women than it is at men. Rape is definitely a man problem because men are the ones doing it, but the way victims are treated, a lot of the points that were made in this was that women would dismiss women because they hadn't had the same experiences, and that's clearly, like, one of the points of this is that every woman experiences sexual assault and the patriarchy and sexism differently. And yeah, anyway, I thought that it was a really worthwhile read. I gave it 4 stars in the end, but it kind of makes a mockery of the star rating system. I would have not rated this if I wasn't doing a little bit of statistical analysis. That one came from Josh at Josh's Bookish Voyages. It was his best read of the year. The next one I want to talk about is The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly, He Could Fly, They Could Fly. The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly. That was recommended by my lovely wife, Nelle. And that was just a really simple, good book. It's essentially just about a hen who wants to escape the coop. But it has all sorts of analogies to the rest of society and the real world. It's almost like somebody said, I want to make the simplest children's book into like a proper literary fiction book, and that's how they've done it. And it was great. It was easy to read. It was enjoyable. It was quick, and I gave it 5 stars, and I think that's all you need to know about it. Then the next 3 books were really just incredible books, I have to say. The next one I'm going to talk about is The Help by Catherine Stockett. This was the second one recommended by Berna, and this is a book that I struggle to see anybody not liking. It is a book based in Jackson, Mississippi, and it talks about maids, black maids, and the women who employ them and how they're treated. Again, kind of like the Roxane Gay one, it makes the point that they're all treated differently. And it details the writing of this book called The Help, which is essentially detailing their lives. This is hilarious in spots. It is horrible in spots. It's definitely about racism as its main point, but also about how women look out for each other and mistreat each other and all of that sort of thing. It's a very woman-dominated book. I think that there was, maybe one male character that I can really think of that played a major part. Then everybody else was bit characters, and there was heaps. The 3 main characters were women. The bad guy was a woman. All the bit parts, except for this one guy, were women. And yeah, but it was ultimately this was just, there was something for everybody in this book. It was super good. I really do recommend it. I'm going to talk about is Sally Rooney's Normal People. This was recommended by Sarah and Laura. And I can't tell you why I love this book so much. It's a really simple book, really well written. Oh, look, we've got another visitor. He's back. Yeah, really simply written, but just a real beautiful book. It details the relationship between Connell and Marianne, and it makes you like both of these characters despite their flaws. Connell is a bit of an arsehole, to be honest. He's definitely by far the nicest male in this book, but he's basically an arsehole. He's just less of an arsehole than all the other men. Marianne is broken in all the ways that makes you want to like her. And she sort of comes out of her shell a bit. Connell definitely comes out of her shell. Both of these people improve as human beings as the book goes on. And there was just something about her writing that made this excellent. I can't really put my finger on why it was so good, but it was just an excellent book. Then Tender is the Flesh. This was from What Victoria Read. I think this was the first book I finished, or the first or the second book I finished, and it was good. It was one of these books that had written all over it, you're gonna like this idea, but it's not gonna be executed well. And then when the world was executed, I'm like, I like this world, but it's a dystopian. The plot's not gonna follow through, because dystopians often have this great world and the plot doesn't quite match. And then the plot matched, and it was super good. It was right on track. And then the ending, and I'm still not sure what I think of the ending. It felt like the ending cheapened the book, but before that last couple of pages, this was on track to be one of the top 5 books I've ever read. And it's thought-provoking, and it's visceral, and it makes you feel things, and it's a book about eating humans. Oh, hello, we've got a visitor. Do you want to wave for the camera, Brenny? You want to wave? Hello. No, don't look. There. Yeah, they all think you're cute. All right. So that's 4 5 stars and 2 4 stars out of 10, which is pretty good. I don't give out 5 stars that easily, so I've just done a little bit of a statistical analysis here, real simple overview. Before I started this, I'd read 81 books for the year, and I've given out 14 5 stars, which is actually really high for me. That's 17%, and I've given out 4 5 stars for this 10. That's 40%. I had an average rating on Goodreads of 3.3 stars for the year, and I've got an average rating of 3.7 stars for these books. So should we listen to Booktubers' recommendations? Yes, we should. Should you read these books? Definitely. The Help, Tender as the Flesh, Normal People, excellent books. The Hen Who Dreams She Can Fly is delightful. Everybody should read Not That Bad by Roxane Gay. And I suspect that The Last Thing You Surrender is going to be something that people think of higher than I think of, and I gave it 4 stars. So there's 6 amazing books from this list that I think that you guys should just go out and read. All right, bye.